Welcome to Movie Tellers. Today we'll be recapping the horror thriller Ready or Not. The movie opens with two young boys, Daniel and Alex, frantically running through a grand mansion, searching for a place to hide. Daniel quickly stashes Alex inside a dumbwaiter. Suddenly, a wounded man with an arrow lodged in his abdomen taps Daniel on the shoulder, desperately pleading for help. But instead of aiding him, Daniel calls out, "He's here!" Moments later, a group of masked individuals storms in, seizing the injured man and dragging him away. As the doors slam shut, we catch a glimpse of a bride sobbing in terror. Fast forward 30 years later, we are introduced to Grace, a stunning young woman on the verge of marrying Alex, now an adult and heir to the wealthy Le Domas family. Raised in foster care, Grace has always longed for a family of her own, and now she finally feels like she belongs. Yet, a lingering worry gnaws at her. Will his family truly accept her? As she wrestles with these thoughts, Alex enters the room, offering comfort and reassurance. They share a tender moment before Daniel walks in, playfully teasing Alex. Then, turning to Grace, he warns her, "You'll never be accepted into this family. You still have time to walk away." After delivering his ominous message, he exits. Alex, now serious, echoes his brother's words. He's right. If you want to leave, now's the time. But Grace, deeply in love, refuses. Nothing will stop her from marrying Alex.
Smile, please.
That night after their wedding, the couple is eager to start their honeymoon. As Alex hesitates, seemingly wanting to tell Grace something important, she dismisses it. Right now, all she wants is to be with him. But before they can get intimate, the door swings open without warning. A stern, eerie-looking woman named Helene enters. Without so much as a knock, she coldly announces, "It's almost time. They're waiting for you." Then, she leaves as abruptly as she arrived. Confused, Grace turns to Alex. That's when he reveals the unsettling truth. Every new member of the Le Domas family must undergo an initiation. At midnight, she must draw a card and play a game. Any game, from backgammon to checkers. Thinking it's just a quirky family tradition, Grace laughs, excited for what seems like harmless fun. But when she asks why this ritual exists, Alex explains, "Because our family built its fortune on games, it's tradition." What Grace doesn't yet realize is that some games are far more dangerous than others. Grace heads downstairs, where the rest of the family is already waiting for her. The Le Domas family consists of Tony, Becky, Daniel, Emily, Alex, Aunt Helene, Fitch, and Charity. They greet her as she takes a seat with. The clock strikes 11:55 p.m., and Tony calls everyone together. They move into a dimly lit room adorned with antique decor, its eerie atmosphere adding to the tension. Tony begins recounting the history of their family ritual before presenting an ornate box. Sliding a blank card into it, he instructs Grace to draw her game. Unaware of the stakes, she plays along, pulling out a card that reads, "Hide and Seek." She laughs, holding it up for everyone to see. But instead of amusement, the room falls silent. A heavy tension fills the air. "The rules are simple," Tony finally says. "You hide and we seek. Stay hidden until sunrise and you win." Still thinking it's just an innocent game, Grace smiles and dashes upstairs, squeezing herself into a dumbwaiter. But as she hides, the family arms themselves with weapons, intent on hunting her down. If they fail to kill her before sunrise, they will all die. Downstairs, Becky, Alex's mother, comforts him, urging him to accept what must be done. But Alex refuses to let his wife die. While the others prepare for the hunt, he sneaks away through the back, determined to save Grace. Tired from hiding, Grace eventually climbs out of the dumbwaiter and cautiously makes her way down a hallway. Meanwhile, one of the maids, responsible for watching the children, wakes up to find George, one of the kids, missing from his bed. She begins calling for him, her voice echoing through the hall. Hearing this, Grace quickly ducks into the shadows. Before she can move, Alex suddenly grabs her, pulling her into a nearby room. As he hurriedly tries to explain the danger she's in, the maid hears their movement and steps inside to investigate. Alex and Grace scramble to hide under the bed. Just then, a gunshot rings out.
George?
Blood splatters against the wall. The maid collapses. From the doorway, Emily cheers in triumph until she realizes she's shot the wrong person. The rest of the family rushes in, scolding her for her mistake. Annoyed but unfazed, they drag the maid's lifeless body away. Grace, paralyzed by shock, can barely process what just happened. Alex grips her shoulders, assuring her that everything will be okay. He leads her to a hidden passage beneath the house. Emily, still rattled, takes a deep breath, looks into a mirror, snorts another line of cocaine, and mutters to herself, "No more screw-ups." In the tunnel, Grace finally explodes, demanding answers from Alex. He quickly explains everything: the deadly ritual, the curse, the real reason his family is hunting her. He tells her to follow the tunnel's exit while he sneaks into the control room to unlock the doors. They split up. Grace soon reaches a fork in the tunnel, 2 doors standing before her. Unsure which way to go, she hesitates before picking one, only to fall straight into the hands of her pursuers. The family quickly surrounds her. Emily raises a gun, aiming directly at her. Thinking fast, Grace dodges just as Emily fires. Seizing the moment, she bolts, sprinting into another room. She considers breaking down the door to escape but stops. Too much noise would give her away. Suddenly, the door creaks open. Daniel steps inside. Their eyes meet. He hesitates. Unlike the others, Daniel has no desire to be part of this twisted game. The family already sees him as weak. He sighs, then whispers, "Run." Grace doesn't waste a second. Daniel gives her a 10-second head start before letting out a loud scream, alerting the others. The family rushes in, furious that he let her go. Emily, near tears, realizes she forgot to reload her gun. Fitch sighs and hands her his crossbow. As she takes aim, another maid bursts into the room, breathless. "I saw her. She ran down the hall." Without thinking, Emily pulls the trigger. The arrow pierces the maid's mouth. She collapses. Dead. Emily gasps, then groans in frustration. "Oh, come on." The others stare at her, exasperated. Meanwhile, Grace is still running for her life. Grace grabs a weapon and rushes into a room, desperately searching for an escape. Meanwhile, Alex makes his way to the control room, frantically working to unlock all the doors. Suddenly, Grace hears footsteps approaching. She quickly hides as the family's male waiter strolls in, humming a tune. Just then, Alex successfully unlocks the doors, and the waiter cautiously steps toward the sound of the opening mechanism. Grace seizes the moment, aiming her gun at him, only to realize the trigger won't pull. The gun is useless. Before she can react, the waiter lunges at her. Thinking fast, she grabs a steaming kettle and hurls its boiling contents at him, then bolts out of the room. At the same time, Tony bursts into the control room and attacks Alex. The two struggle fiercely, but Alex gains the upper hand, slamming Tony's neck against the table, choking him. Daniel steps in, urging Alex to stop. As Alex hesitates, Tony seizes the opportunity, grabbing an object and knocking Alex unconscious. He slumps to the ground. Without hesitation, Tony and Daniel drag Alex away, cuffing him to a bed to prevent any further interference. Grace finally escapes the mansion, sprinting into the night. She stumbles upon the goat cellar and slips inside, trying to catch her breath. Just then, young George wanders in. Grace, desperate and injured, softly pleads with him for help. But without warning, the boy raises a flare gun and shoots her in the hand. The flare rips through her palm, leaving a gaping hole. Screaming in agony, Grace instinctively lashes out, knocking George unconscious. As she staggers away, a startled goat lets out a loud bleat, spooking her. She stumbles backward, falling straight into a pit filled with decaying corpses. Struggling through the pile of rotting bodies, she claws her way out, her entire body trembling with pain and disgust. With sheer willpower, she pushes forward, breaking through the estate's gate, cutting herself in the process, before limping into the dark woods. Meanwhile, the head chef drives through the estate's perimeter, scanning the area. Spotting movement in the distance, he radios the family. "She's in the woods, I'll get her." Grace, trying to stay hidden, crouches behind a tree. But before she can make a move, Steven, the chef, catches sight of her. Their eyes lock. He moves in. With no other choice, Grace attacks. A vicious struggle ensues, both of them grappling for control. Fueled by sheer desperation, Grace manages to overpower Steven, wrapping a cloth around his neck and choking him until he loses consciousness. Panting, she stumbles into his car, slamming the door shut. She immediately dials the car's emergency service. "Please, they're trying to kill me. Call the police," she screams, but the response isn't what she expects. "Ma'am, this vehicle has been reported stolen. I have to shut it down." "No, please don't do this," she begs. But before she can say another word, the engine dies. Frustrated beyond belief, she screams, cursing at the agent. Then, without warning, crash! The window shatters as Steven smashes his fist through the glass. The screen cuts to black. When Grace regains consciousness, she finds herself slumped in the back seat of the car. Her head throbs. In the front, Steven, now victorious, grins as he turns the music up, celebrating. But his triumph is short-lived. Suddenly, Grace jerks awake. Fueled by adrenaline, she lunges forward, attacking him with relentless kicks and punches. The car swerves wildly. Steven loses control. The vehicle flips. It crashes, rolling over multiple times before coming to a screeching halt. Grace, bloodied but still alive, crawls out of the wreckage. She barely has time to catch her breath when Daniel steps out from the darkness, gun in hand. She freezes. "Daniel, please," she pleads, but his expression is grim. "I can't let my entire family die because of you," he murmurs. Before she can react, he strikes her hard with the butt of his gun. Her vision blurs. The world fades. From the shadows, Tony emerges. Together, he and Daniel drag Grace's unconscious body back to the house. The ritual must be completed. The family gathers in the ritual room, surrounding Grace, who is bound tightly to the altar. The air is thick with tension as they chant their incantations, passing a ceremonial cup around for each member to drink from. The ritual reaches its climax. Tony lifts a dagger, ready to plunge it into Grace's chest. But before the blade strikes, he suddenly gasps, clutching his throat. Blood dribbles from his mouth. One by one, the others double over, retching and coughing violently. Chaos erupts. Amid the confusion, Daniel swiftly unties Grace, pulling her to her feet. "Run!" he urges. Meanwhile, Alex manages to break free from his restraints. As they flee, Daniel reveals, "I laced the drink with hydrochloric acid. Nothing deadly, just enough to ruin their stomachs for a few weeks." Before they can escape, Charity steps into their path, gun raised. Daniel tries to reason with her, but without hesitation, she pulls the trigger. The bullet rips through his neck. He staggers, eyes wide in shock before collapsing. Fury ignites in Grace. She charges at Charity, wrestling for control of the gun. Shots fire wildly, but the chamber quickly empties. Enraged, Grace grips the weapon's butt and strikes Charity down with a brutal blow. As she turns, her eyes fall on Daniel. Barely clinging to life, she kneels beside him, watching helplessly as he draws his final breath. Grief turns to survival. She runs, but Tony intercepts her, attacking with desperate fury. Grace grabs a nearby lamp, smashing it into his head, knocking him unconscious. Without hesitation, she hurls the burning lamp into the curtains. Flames erupt, quickly spreading through the room. Alex stumbles in, his breath hitching as he sees Daniel lifeless in a pool of blood. He falls to his knees, horror-stricken. Becky fires an arrow at Grace, barely missing her. The two women collide in a vicious struggle. Becky fights with ruthless desperation, but Grace, fueled by rage and adrenaline, gains the upper hand. She slams Becky to the ground, then grabs a wooden box and smashes it down on her skull, again and again, until Becky's body lies motionless. Alex steps forward, staring at the lifeless form of his mother. His face hardens. Slowly, he turns to Grace. He steps closer, his voice soothing, pretending to comfort her. But as she lowers her guard, he suddenly grabs her, calling out for the others. The remaining family members rush in, seizing her and dragging her back to the altar. The ritual must be completed. Helene thrusts a dagger into Alex's hands. "Do it!" she commands. But as Alex raises the blade, Grace seizes her chance, grabbing Helene's arm and twisting it. Helene yelps in pain, giving Grace just enough room to dodge as Alex's dagger plunges into her shoulder instead. Gritting her teeth, Grace rips the blade from her flesh, ready to defend herself as they lunge at her again. Then, suddenly, Helene freezes. The first rays of sunlight pierce through the windows. "No, no," Helene whispers, her voice cracking. "It's over. We lost. Forgive us." A tense silence follows. Nothing happens. Fitch lets out a breathless chuckle. "See? Nothing. I told you it was all bullshit." Boom! Helene explodes. Blood splatters across the room. A chilling silence follows. Then, one by one, the family members begin to burst into pieces.
Right.
The ritual was real. Their fate is sealed. Panic-stricken, Alex turns to Grace, eyes pleading. But before he can utter a word, he explodes too. Grace stands alone, drenched in blood, breathing heavily. A strange flicker catches her eye. A shadowy figure seated in the chair, then vanishes. The flames engulf the mansion as Grace stumbles outside. Smoke rises into the night sky. She takes a deep breath, exhausted, victorious. The house burns behind her. If you enjoyed this movie, please subscribe to our channel. Thank you!